Welcome to the UpKeep Pledge Pros Podcast, a podcast dedicated to unmatched value and unwavering support for our community and our customers. Today, we have a very special episode. Today is Veterans Day. We're filming this in real time. I have my good friend, industry professional, and fellow Navy veteran, John Livingston from McKinstry. John, welcome.
Thanks, Bryan. It's so great to be back for the third time now. So that's pretty exciting.
I think you may hold the record for the most appearances on the Pledge Pros podcast.
All right. I don't know about Motor Doc. Got a bunch of our friends that are frequent, but I'll take it.
Yeah. So what's funny about that is you and I have never met. We met through a mutual friend of ours, Matthew Knuth,
That's right.
and we hit it off immediately. And I'm always stoked to have you on the podcast. We're always talking about veterans. We're always talking about military, Navy, the value, the struggles, the things that just are inherent in being and having been a service member. So it's super special for me to have you on here today. I want to make this easy. I want to chop it up. I have some pre-planned questions we can talk about. And then at the end, we're going to give a little bit of advice, maybe to future veterans that are transitioning and even current veterans that may be, experiencing hardship or whatever, right? But I'm just so stoked, dude. So first, I know you've
Yeah.
had an intro many times, but again, give us your naval history, rank, job, and where you spent most of your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And just real quick, a big shout out, like you said, to Matthew. Wouldn't have been able to have this great relationship with you and Upkeep and without him. So thanks, Matt.
Right on.
I served in the United States Navy for 21 years and a little bit of change, but who's counting? I was a submariner, torpedoman by trade, and really just found a home in the Navy after high school. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with the rest of my time, and the Navy provided a great avenue for me to gain experience, gain leadership skills, and be able to apply those later on in life. So I started out my career in the submarine force, going through sub school up in Groton and A school and all of those things, and followed those on with various sub and short tours in the USS Tennessee. I taught, or following that, I went to be stationed on the Louisville over in Pearl Harbor. I taught at two service schools, both Nasty Pack and Trident Training Facility here in Bangor. And I was the torpedoman chief on the Santa Fe, which was probably, I don't want to be biased, but probably the highlight of my career, being able to lead sailors, and finished up before my retirement as the maintenance and material management coordinator on USS Ohio.
Nice.
So that's where I guess the bulk of my maintenance experience comes from, and why I love to do what I do now.
Yeah, that's
So yeah, it
awesome.
was 21 years of good times and bad times, but the good outweigh the bad for obvious reasons, staying for so long.
Yeah, no doubt. Before I share, I wanted to just have a comment. You said you were at Pearl Harbor.
It was, yeah.
Oh, I want to go there so bad. I just know that if I go, I'm going to be crying like a baby, like reading all the memorials and all.
Yeah,
It's a wild thing to think about, and reading stories about that day, and you take all the political crap out of it. I'm talking about the service members that were getting the work done, and the people
for
who
sure.
tragically lost their lives, and just the gritty stories about what had happened. I'd be a mess. That stuff jacks me up.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way, man. We just had a Veterans Day ceremony at my kids' schools. I was able to attend both. I was like fortunate enough to do that, and just the national anthem, or remembering all the stories, like you said. I spent a lot of time out in Pearl Harbor, and I was fortunate enough to see all the memorials and um, experience that place, and it's very moving, especially
Yeah.
at the Arizona.
Yeah,
And it
wild.
really gives you time to pause to say, hey, thanks for your sacrificing your service, even though we were kind of going through the same thing at the time.
Right. Yeah, it's a wild thing. They're just back then service members. Even I mean, look, service members in general are amazing, but back then they were just a different breed of people, right?
Absolutely.
They
Absolutely.
they were just they're the greatest generation is like an understatement, right?
Right.
Um, but so for me, I joined the Navy in 2009 at 20 years old. I turned 21 in Pensacola at firefighting school.
Hey,
So as you can imagine, there was a lot of trouble that was had being turning 21 there.
absolutely.
But um, so I went I after I dropped out of special warfare, I went undesignated. I was at the needs of the Navy, unfortunately. It turned out to be, an amazing experience, the best thing that could have ever happened to me, honestly. But yeah, so I was undesignated airman. I went to firefighting school. I became when I got to the USS George Washington, which was stationed in Yokosuka, Japan. That was my home port. So I was put in air department, V1 or
Hmm.
fly one specifically. And I was a chalk and chain flight deck runner. So I ran the flight deck as an ABH, considered an ABH, an airman, chalking and chaining aircraft. So the yellow shirts would direct aircraft on the flight deck. I was a blue shirt, blue float coat.
Oh
Wherever
yeah.
they put the aircraft, my job was to chain and chalk those aircraft to wherever they were and do whatever else was
Right.
asked of me. Um, so while I was on my first deployment, I was in Fly One in Air Department, and I had learned about a rate called an AS, an Aviation Support Equipment Technician.
Hmm.
And I had learned that they were pretty much the flight deck mechanics. Well, only a handful get to be flight deck mechanics, fixing cranes and generators and forklifts and static frequency converters, all the machines that are in support of the air wing. So once I found that out, I was like, oh, I'm going to be that
Yeah.
because I come from being a mechanic in the past, right? I went to trade school, all that type of stuff. So I struck the rate. I almost made third off the strike.
Wow.
Uh, I would have made third if I would have known the Navy names for half the crap that was flight deck. But
Yeah. Because we
when
can't
they
call it what it is. We got to make it up
yeah,
some
when they were saying
context.
like spotting dolly and Tilly and this and that, I'm like, I have no idea what that is. Um, so I did strike the rate. I moved into the intermediate maintenance department, IM4, as an AS. I was in, when I first moved into the rate, we were in port going to Atsugi, Japan for our import rework. So we would send all of our equipment to Atsugi, Japan to the rework facility. We would rebuild things, paint, get everything a fresh start before the next deployment. And we had 3 months to do so.
Mm.
And then I did such a bang up job, having been a mechanic, what kind of unfair. I understood a lot of that in relation to my fellow sailors. I was asked to be a flight deck troubleshooter as an airman,
Hmm.
which is unheard of. I might have been the only one in the Navy at the time. Um, and there's four flight deck troubleshooters. There's two on day shift and two on night shift. The rest of the ASs work in the hangar bay.
Yeah.
So as an airman, I worked with a second class. Um, to run the flight deck, troubleshooting machines all day long during flight operations. That's actually a picture of me behind me in my background.
Hey,
That's me working on a crash and salvage 20K forklift.
that's
Uh,
awesome.
so I did that. I made third class immediately. I made second class my first try, and just kept rolling with it. And I was a flight deck troubleshooter the entire time. I never did anything else. And in port, I worked on machines at Atsugi. I did not do 21 years. Um, I wanted to settle down. I've had a girlfriend and a fiance the whole time. I wanted to have children, and I know it's very difficult in the Navy, especially sailors, because we're always at sea. We're always
Absolutely.
deployed, whether it's wartime or no wartime, you're always at sea. Um, so I got out. I went to work for Caterpillar right after that. So that was me, man. I mean, I love turning the wrenches. I would have made E6, but LPO, you stop touching stuff. Um,
That was my downfall for sure.
and
Sure.
I didn't want to get soft hands, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I kind of want to touch on two things that you were talking about. One, I think the Navy definitely missed out on keeping you around with the complete badass that you were. Um, and kudos to you, man. That's almost unheard of being, um, in the position that you were in with so little time in service and the trust and obviously, well warranted trust that your chain of command had in you and your shop had in you to put you up there. Um, and then the second thing was you mentioned your girlfriend and your fiance, and I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to all of the veteran families out there as
Yeah.
well. for their
Wow.
sacrifice, because they truly are. And everybody, it's a cliche. That's the toughest job in the Navy is in the military spouse, and um, but it pretty much is true, right?
Yeah.
Our family sacrificed a lot, and our loved ones sacrificed a lot for us to go out and be able to do the work that we did.
Yep. It's crazy. I think David Goggins said it in his he was receiving an award for something. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact thing he said, but it kind of was like, you know, uh, military service members, no matter what the branch is, the majority of them are all around the world. You don't know what they're doing, where they are, who they're
Yeah,
with, and as a spouse, a family member, it's like you're left to your own devices to just think:
yeah,
is he in harm's way? Is he in combat? Is he safe? Is he eating enough? Is he, how's his
yeah, yeah.
mental health? Um, is my care package even going to make it to him? Right?
Right.
When's the next time he's going to call me? Am I going to get an email? Right? So I know if it was me, I'd be bugging out. I'd be like, oh, I haven't heard from this person.
Yeah,
It's just wild.
yeah. Not to mention all the. I mean, you're picking up 100% of the daily life, right? If you
Yeah.
got kids, normally it's a shared responsibility for 90% of the people around the world, but you're the one left holding the fort down, so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah, my hat's off to them, man. I can't thank the family members enough. So and the spouses.
Yeah, it's a wild thing. And we're so grateful for that. So I want to switch gears. I want to start our questions.
All right.
All right. Um, so John, most memorable moment. I know you had a long, storied service. Okay, so yours is going to be a lot harder to recall than mine, probably. Um,
Yes, man.
but what's the most memorable moment? Good. Let's stay away from bad. Good. What's a good memorable moment? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And we talked about this before we started recording. And I mentioned that my kind of probably the highlight of my career was my Chiefs tour on board Santa Fe. Um, and really being in a position to uh, have your sailors perform at the top levels of their game, being able to accomplish the mission, zero incidents, zero issues, minimal paperwork, because we all hate that. Um, but really seeing the fruits of your labor as a leader come to fruition with your sailors, being able to do the job that you trained them to do for so long, get on deployment, get the mission done, and get back home safely. I did two Western Pacific deployments on Santa Fe with a great group of sailors, a great chain of command, and I'd sail to hell and back with them again if duty called. But yeah, that was really the highlight of my career for sure, is being able to see my sailors grow on board that ship. Whether it was from the biggest national tasking where we were at places we can't talk about,
Right.
or if it was the smallest thing of being able to do a quick clean and inspect maintenance by themselves for the first time without any help and without any issues. That's really, sorry, I'm kind of I don't want to get emotional on you, but
Real
but
deal,
yeah,
man.
it's a proud moment, man. It's a
Yeah.
proud moment for sure.
100%, no question. I didn't have the opportunity as much as you did to, in the military at least, to really, you were a chief, right? You were able to, you had a
Yeah.
whole crew and team underneath you. As an E5, I was a work center supervisor on the flight deck, but it was just me and one other guy. Um,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
um, but mine, I would say I have like two. One is more bigger picture, one is more specific. But I think when I first became a flight deck troubleshooter, and you mentioned leadership having the confidence in me, and I would be wrong without acknowledging I had two, well, really two really good chiefs that were a conduit to senior leadership to be like, hey, this guy needs to be here. He's the right
Mhm.
guy for the job, right? One very specifically, and his name was Chief Fontanez. He's no longer in the service, but I think he retired as a senior chief. Um, but he got there as a first class. I was an airman. We hit it off. He was just one of those guys where he would, you know, he said, I don't know it all, right?
Yeah.
I don't have all the answers, right? But we have standards in the Navy that we follow. to solve these problems. And mixed with some inherent skill and some dedication and you as a sailor putting it all
Yeah.
forward, you can do amazing things. And he was a conduit for that for me. But anyway, so the first one is the first time I got a captain's coin. Uh,
Hey.
I was totally like, didn't know what it was. Um, no clue. I'm running the flight deck as an airman, troubleshooting machines. We had a P-25 firefighting truck break down, right blocking the catapult and elevator one, I think. I forget, but it broke down.
Yeah.
And as a troubleshooter, I wear a cranial with a radio in it, so I can
Mm.
hear the. I think the flight deck's the 5MC or the 1MC, 5MC. I think it's the 5MC.
5MC. 5MC almost sounds right.
Yeah, 1MC is the ship.
Yeah.
5MC is the flight deck. I'm pretty sure. And I hear the handler who's in charge of the entire flight deck being like, "Hey, GSE, what's going on? This thing's in the way. We got to land aircraft. Blah 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 blah. It's in the way. It's in the way." And I'm like, "Yes, sir. I have just let me check one thing. Um, and we could not get this P-25 to start. They shut it off, and technically, you're not supposed to shut the P-25 off during flight ops. It should always be on running.
Mm.
Um, well, it just so happened that when they shut it off and they went to restart it, it had a short in the starting circuit and burned the wire and blew the
Of course it did.
yeah. So I didn't know that at the time. So I'm checking all over all the stuff, and then just in my mind, I go, you know what? I'm just gonna crawl underneath to see if I can turn the key on, jump the starter out, and start the machine without because there's no electronics. These are all mechanical
Yeah.
two-stroke 53 series Detroits. I went underneath there. I jumped it with a wrench, not even a wire. I like a wrench jump. They would have been losing their mind if they would have known that.
Make
Jumped
sure
it.
the Naval Safety
B-25
Center
started
doesn't
up.
watch this podcast.
B-25 starts up. We drive off. I come crawling out from underneath of it. And like a day later, my chief is like, "Hey, you're going to be at what did they call it? Not a ceremony. It was something in a hangar bay where they were giving awards out."
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Uh, what?" So he's like, "Yeah, make sure you're wearing your NWUs, you're clean, you're not wearing your flight deck uniform, make sure your boots are clean, everything like that." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I go there and I get a captain's coin from Captain Fenton. He was on the bridge in the island that day, and he saw, I guess his what he had said, and I have the writing on my a plaque from it.
Hmm.
Um, just the grit. Hey, we're not going to just abandon, right? I could have easily just been like, get all these people involved and we'll pump the hydrostatic brakes, open the brakes, push the machine, get all these people to do all this work, right?
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And then the other one is just a really general one, which is every day you get up, I put my flight deck uniform on. I wore specific flight deck boots. I mean, I was wearing a turtleneck, a Nomex, float coat, cranial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every time I would walk up onto the flight deck, whether it be behind the island or by elevator 3, just that heat and that smell of JP5 burning that just hits you. You will never, ever forget that.
Yeah. That's yeah, those sensory things, man. I walk around, doing things over in our fabrication shop, and you'll like catch a smell of somebody doing some welding, and immediately, right, you turn back into. Yeah, I
Yes.
remember this one time I was on Firewatch, or yeah, that's amazing.
It's just wild. The sensory stuff is wild. I fly a lot now for upkeep, going to conferences and
Mm.
customers and stuff. And whenever I'm sitting on airplanes and I get that whiff of jet fuel,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, ooh.
Yeah, taking you back to quote unquote better days.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that. All right, next question. Scariest moment. It can be emotionally scary, positionally scary, environmentally scary. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this one, right? Because I was I don't want to say hesitant to talk about certain things. We all kind of fight with our own demons. And I think the best one, the best one I think would be important to talk about. We just observed 9/11 a couple of months ago, and I actually joined the service before September 11th, 2001. I shipped off to boot camp in February of that year. So I was, fresh out of high school, brand new to the Navy, just left home for the first time by myself. Um, and I was actually in sea school up in Groton, Connecticut. I just graduated boot camp in April of that year, shipped off to Groton to go to sub school and my service schools for becoming a torpedoman.
Nice.
And we were sitting in class, and again, this is in Connecticut, a couple hours outside of New York City. Um, Sitting in class on a normal morning, waiting for our instructor to come in, and the door burst open, and he said somebody just bombed the World Trade Center, and he ran out, and that's all the information we got.
Hmm.
So we were kind of sitting there, mumbling to each other, trying to figure out what's going on. And a few minutes later, he comes back in. It wasn't a bomb; it was a plane. He said America's under attack. The second plane hit, he came back in, let us know, and we all got dismissed. We were told not to leave the base. We were told to go back to the barracks to shelter in place before shelter in place was even a thing, right?
Yeah.
And we were just kind of left on our own on base until the news started rolling out, and um, the after action started taking place around the country. And that was probably, if I had to say, the scariest, or at least the most impactful on me, right? I came in the Navy looking for a college degree, right?
Yeah.
Looking for some adventure. Back then,
Just a
accelerate your,
pollywog, man.
yeah, yeah. Back then it was accelerate your life and see the world. And that was exciting for me. And then all of a sudden we're thrust into this conflict that lasted for, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
So when I think of, and I say scary, I mean that's, you're really forced to grow up fast
Sure.
um, when you join the military, and even more so, I think back then with the start of the Forever Wars or Operation Enduring Freedom and those things. So yeah, it was rough. Going to your first duty station, you see all the security measures were ramped up, vehicle checks because everybody thinks that, especially those bases that I was on with our ballistic missile submarines. You can imagine how tight security was.
Right.
Um, it was just a very poignant mind shift change for sure.
Yeah, that's wild. I can't imagine that, especially being a service member, that directly impacts what you're going to do and where you're going to go, right?
Absolutely.
Um, I would think I was in seventh or eighth grade when that happened.
Thanks, man. Thanks for rubbing it in.
So I remember, they let us out of school. We all came home. My dad came home. My dad was a, prior Navy and Army officer. So, he
Mm,
was all fired up. And yeah, what a wild time. I don't have anything that quite that scary.
yeah.
Because that's like a whole world changing event, right? Um, Keeping it to the Navy and like the flight, the flight deck, my ship and stuff. I think for me, it was more of a physical moment. It was actually when I was a blue shirt, chalking and chaining aircraft up in Fly
Mm,
One, um, on the bow, and uh, during heavy seas, you chalk and chain aircrafts differently. So under normal circumstances, you'll put one chalk on one wheel, and I think
mm,
it's six chains per aircraft, three on each side. Um, During heavy seas, you do, I think it's 10 or 12 and two chalks. Uh,
okay.
Someone will correct me. I really don't remember. I wish I did. But anyway, I was back in as they spot the aircraft, they don't stop and wait for you, right? They're still
Yeah.
bringing other aircraft up to spot and spot and spot.
Yeah.
Um, so it was when I was first a blue shirt, you get down chalk and chaining. We used to race each other and build our skills and shit like that. So I'm chalking and chaining this aircraft up on the bow, and it's very heavy sea, so the ship is pitching and yawing heavily. And when that happens, the aircraft on deck, they don't drive themselves.
Yeah.
They have to use thrust. They can steer the front wheel of the aircraft, but they have to use thrust to push the aircraft around on the deck.
Right.
Well, in heavy seas, when the ship starts pitching, they have to thrust more, right? To keep the
Holy crap.
so I was coming out from behind a Rhino, which FA-18, And they turned a rhino, and which is normal. They turned another rhino to spot it, and it went up on thrust because the ship had pitched, and the thrust pinned me against a fuel tank.
Oh man.
So I'm pinned against it, but I was lucky enough that when they turned it, I went like this. So I put my arm up, and my arm covered the bottom half of my face. And
Mm,
you're wearing cranial and goggles, and you have leather gloves and a Nomex. Everything else is covered except for this.
mm-hmm.
And I covered, and my hand, I was like pinned like that, and it held me there for a good 5 or 6 seconds, and I'm just getting cooked,
Oh
man.
my goodness.
And I was like, I'm gonna burn. I'm gonna like I couldn't it's hard to breathe because I was like, I'm gonna get jacked up here. And then eventually, the ship pitches down and then they turn, and I fall on the ground. I run out, I run out from underneath the aircraft, and I've got like where the gap between my Nomex and my glove, it was all burned on my wrist, and I
Mm,
had some red, like real hot heat, rashing under here. That for me was probably physically the scariest thing that happened. And um, I
so
mean, during
your boss was probably saying, where have you been?
well, the thing about it is so when you're on deck in different flies, you have an ABH, you have a handler who's like a third or
Mm,
a second class who's in charge of that fly, that center,
mhm.
that work center. Um, but there's so many not so many, but there's like 4 or 5 people chalking and chaining aircraft. So, as you get done one, you run down the line into the next one that no one's working on. So they kind of didn't even notice
Oh,
until I
really?
like came out and I'm like just shaking and, all burned up. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, pretty wild. The flight deck's no joke. I mean, it's a intricate dance of thousands of things that can kill you.
I can't imagine, man.
Um,
Can't
but
imagine.
great time though. I wouldn't have chose any other way to do it. And I was
Right.
shredded too. You're running up there all day in 130-degree weather.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, a couple years after you get out, you're like, damn, what the hell happened?
Yeah, yes, exactly, exactly. Um, so all right, Veterans Day, right? I know I was on with Greg Christensen. I don't know if you had a chance to see that episode yet, but it's got me and Howard on there with Greg. Um, he asked, what does Veterans Day mean? Uh,
Mhm.
and I'll go first. And it, like, I say the same thing every time, but I think it's so impactful. I think you already know what I'm going to say. Um, I kind of summarize it like this: anybody, any veteran, any military, no matter what it did, they could have, it doesn't matter your job, like whether you're a complete badass or someone who just was a cook, like it doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah.
That person wrote a blank check to the United States government up to and including their life. And that is so undervalued. Like people can't even, it's hard for people to even recognize what that means.
Yeah.
You know, think about D-Day, where they're storming beaches. Those guys, there's that famous picture of that one boat that the kids look like they're 12 years old.
Yeah.
They hadn't even been in the Army or the Marines for 3 months, right? And they wrote that check, and the massive majority of them did not get off that boat,
That's
right?
true.
So it's like it doesn't matter about the time, it doesn't matter about the rank, it doesn't matter about the position, special forces, special warfare, non-ship, shore, sea, submariner. Uh, it's so important just to recognize that that is the check that was written, and that check was redeemable at any
For
point.
sure. For sure.
So that's kind of how I summarize it. And I think that people should just recognize we're normal people. We don't need special treatment, right?
Yeah.
But just recognize that that was there the whole time and that the outcomes of your day to day were not controlled by you,
Very true.
right?
Very true. And I really couldn't say it better myself. I was having a conversation. I think I mentioned before. I spoke at my kids' schools, or at least my daughter's school. We had kind of a little parade for my son at his elementary school, which was awesome.
That is cool.
Um, but when I talk to people, especially at work, about what does it mean to be a veteran? I'm a part of the Veterans Alliance over this side um, at McKinstry, and we do a lot of outreach for veterans transition and veteran awareness at the workplace and however people can support veterans.
Right.
And the difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day is always a big topic, a big question that I get. Like, so, Memorial Day, we talk about those that didn't make it home, like you said, right? All those young soldiers and Marines, service members on Omaha Beach, and others that wanted to fight for their country. We're fighting for something that they believed in. We're fighting for, our allies overseas, and like you said, they all look 12. A lot of those guys lied to get in the service.
That's right.
All these famous stories. I want to plug, and I'm not sponsored, by the way. I want to plug the Fat Electrician um, on your show, and if you're curious about war history or combat history, he does a great job. I would caution for language, but he does a great job at outlining some of those unsung heroes of various wars and conflicts. But Memorial Day really, kind of encapsulates those folks that didn't get home. So we remember the sacrifice that they gave, that blank check that had to be cashed in order for us to maintain the freedoms that we have, right? Whereas Veterans Day, right, it's a chance to acknowledge and celebrate the sacrifice that all service members, past and present, have gone through. And it's super special to me because it gives me a chance to reflect on my service, and the impact that it had on my life, as well as thank my fellow brothers and sisters in arms that, like whether it was a few years or 30, it doesn't matter. Like you said, it didn't matter what you did in the military. It didn't matter how you served. It's that you served, and that you were putting something bigger than yourself first in your life. So I can't say it enough. For those of you watching that did serve your country, thank you so much for your service.
It's a choice, man, and it's not an easy choice to make. It's a hard choice, right? And for whatever reason we do it, whether it's you want to go to college, you want to better your life, you want to whatever it is, there's still a set of rules and a set of outcomes that have to be followed, and there's no getting around it. And those
Yeah.
things be very difficult for certain service members to handle. And which brings me to my next topic, and this is what we're going to close on, and I want to harp on this for a minute. Is advice to veterans, to transitioning service members. Um, you know, we see you, we hear you. There's a lot of people out there that see you and hear you and recognize you. And it's okay to have problems and that you're going through things that people don't understand. We understand. We get it. We're not going to say we
Yeah.
understand what you're going through, but we understand in a sense that this is something that um, needs to be handled, right? So from transitioning, do your homework before you get out. Don't wait till you get out. Do it before you get out. Search jobs that
Absolutely.
are the same as your MOS or your rate or whatever it is, right? Think about your passions. Think about what you want to do. How do these things align? There's so many resources. Just Google veterans resources, right? You're going to see a billion things that pop up, man, and take action. Take action before you get out of the Navy. Um, and then struggling veterans. I personally donate to several veterans nonprofits that help with veterans who are struggling with mental health issues, with all different types of the terrible sides of being a service member. And take take those things, ask for help, speak, man. I can't say that enough. Just ask for help. Uh,
Yes.
just if you're thinking about bad things, do it tomorrow. Do it tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
When that tomorrow comes, just do it tomorrow, right? Just get people,
Yeah.
tell people they want to help. You're so valuable. You need to be around. And so that's my two things. Start being proactive before you get out of the service. Use the resources, leverage the resources, contact fellow veterans. They want to help. I was trick or treating with my kids, and a guy saw me wearing my Navy shirt, and he goes, "I was an AT chief. I got his number. I don't know this guy,
Yeah,
right?" But he
for
wants to
sure.
chop it up. He asked me, "Hey, have you done any kind of veterans benefits and things like that?" They want to know, right?
Yeah.
You
Because
have a
we care.
hand. Our
Yeah.
hands are out. Take our hands. And then second is you need to be here. You need to be here.
Absolutely. The
Go ahead.
world needs the world needs people that are willing to sacrifice. And
Yes,
veterans have a proven track record, to be quite
that's right.
frank. Um, we need you. And I will ask a favor. When you post this video, could you put a couple of links to some of your favorite organizations down in
100%.
in the comments of this video? Because the more, like you said, the more awareness we get out there, the better. Um, and as far as veteran transition, I've already pointed up to it before, right? The Veterans Alliance here at McKinstry does a great job of working with active duty service members and post service veterans on finding meaningful employment, finding purpose in their post military careers. And we partner with some great resources like Hiring Our Heroes Foundation, which is a Chamber of Commerce foundation that's nationwide. We also partner with 4Block, which is another veterans resources. I'm not going to plug a bunch of these, right? I know this is not really the purpose of that, but partnering with organizations with your company through an employee resource group, I think is a great way to give back to our community, or to give back to veterans in general. If you're looking for an avenue to help, so like Bryan said, like you said, Bryan, if you want to support, do some quick Google searches. There's over 30,000 plus veterans resource nonprofits out there that do great work for our service members and our veterans. And like I said, if you're struggling, take some time and do your research. If it's going to be a mountain to climb towards the end of your military career, trying to find the right place for you, take advantage of as much as you can. Specifically, one comes to mind. It's called the Honor Foundation that works specifically because I know you said special forces. You were thinking about that at one point in your career. They target specifically special forces operators and folks that are in that community, because it's so hard to translate those skills to something outside the military. I ran and doing running and gunning for 20 years. What am I going to do with that in the civilian world?
That's right.
And they do a great job at caring for those folks and putting them on the right path and finding their purpose after the military. So, yeah, thanks for highlighting that, by the way.
Yeah, no worries. It's important, man. And the last part is like when I just clarifying, when I say do it tomorrow, do it tomorrow, do it tomorrow, I mean people who are struggling and they are really struggling. Don't make those choices, man. Reach
Right.
out,
Give it another chance.
give it another chance. Just if you have that thought, talk to somebody, do it tomorrow.
Please. Yeah. 988. 988 is a great number.
When tomorrow comes, Dad, do it tomorrow.
There you go.
John, it's been amazing. I love you so much. And, I love having you on here. I feel like we're boys, dude. Like you're on the other side of the country.
Never met. I love you too, man.
So it's been great.
That, by the way.
What's that?
We need to change that, by the way.
I know.
Seattle.
I know. I need to figure it out. We used to go to a conference in Portland, I think. Yeah. But we haven't been since last year, and it was before I met you. So we can yell at Matt about not introducing us earlier.
There you go. There you go. Matt, you're on notice.
But yeah, dude, so awesome. We're going to push this out today. The marketing team at UpKeep is so stoked. At UpKeep, we have several veterans as well. We're actually celebrating them right now. We have an internal, Slack that we're posting. I just posted the picture behind me. So, everybody's doing that type of stuff, which is amazing. But just, get out there, spread the word, and don't look back, don't be ashamed. Don't let people, scare you into not telling your story. It's important, no matter how big, how small. And again, John, thank you. Thank McKinstry. McKinstry is and before this is a huge veterans ally, a massive organization that can help you translate those skills. John is a part of that. John has done that work. And we thank you, dude. I can't thank you enough. And on behalf of UpKeep, thank you, and thank you, McKinstry.
Absolutely, man. It was such a great chance to talk to you. I was super stoked when you reached out to me last week, last minute, to be able to put something together. And always love talking to you, brother. Thank you to UpKeep, and thanks to you, man. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, John. We will see you on the fourth one next time.
All right, bud.
Thanks, man.